If there's a common denominator to the sport, it's speed and risk. In America's heartland, in towns like Eldora, Springfield, Putnamville, speed and risk combine with horsepower, with a vengeance. These are the sprints and midgets. In their shape and design, they are American originals. Truer than true to the roots of open-wheel racing, these cars have been the root of many a budding racing career. On these circuits, some race for points and just enough cash to keep their cars going. Others race to win, their sights set on the National Sprintcar Championship. A championship here can be a stepping stone to the big leagues, to Daytona or fabled Indianapolis. It's serious business. Dan Drynan knows. A few years back, Dan Drynan was leading in the points to win the championship. That's when Dan Drynan pushed too hard.
I made a bad pass because I was trying to make some more points, and I put my car in a position it shouldn't have been. I ran over a tire, and I was in the worst flip that I've ever seen, and I've watched the tape a lot of times. I was the national champion to be, and my body was destroyed. My arm was torn apart, my finger was removed, my collarbone was broke, my clavicle was bone, my pelvis was busted.
But the most disturbing part of the Springfield accident was still to happen.
My parents lived in Arizona at the time. My father went to the racetrack that night, and he was approached by several people wishing him condolences on my death. I mean, there was rumor mill went crazy, and it's sad that people do that. My father's heart was broken that night.
After this, the worst their sport has. What makes drivers keep racing?
Our bodies are made with a safety device, and the safety device is our memory. My brain has blocked out the worst parts, and I don't remember the worst part of that day. And I'm, I guess, glad that it is blocked, because if it was there when I got back in the race car the next time, I would be thinking about that.
Coming around there, your leader, Jack Hewitt.
In his 27 years as a racer, Jack Hewitt has won just about everything. His accomplishments on the short tracks make him a legend, and he's won his share of infield fights. In those 27 seasons, Jack Hewitt has seen the ups and downs of his sport, and he just keeps getting right back in the car.
The scariest part of life to me, it would be getting up on Monday morning and going to work, you know. That's my two options, either get a job and go to work or get back in that race car. So it don't really bother me getting back in that race car. We've had some of my good friends go and get killed in a race car or really hurt really bad. And you'll joke about it because that's the way that most race car drivers blow it off. It's just they have to put it out of their mind or they're never going to be a good race car driver.
Making jokes of the danger has led to a racing language all its own to describe the different types of accidents. This is the self-inflicted. The most unexplainable of all crashes. It's also the most embarrassing. The barrel roll. It happens when you get the car too far sideways. Some crashes are on a first-name basis, the gentle Tommy tip-over. Then there's the art of bicycling. This is one bike you don't want to ride. happens when a car gets too much air. And when you hear the drivers talking about going into a helicopter, this is what happens. End over end is just that.
When an accident happens, there's only one thing you can say about it. If you missed it, you were lucky. I mean, I don't care what they say. People say, oh, you did a good job missing that crash. We probably had our eyes closed the same as the people in the stands did. You know, we just got by.
Wednesday through Sunday, at the mile tracks and quarter-mile bull rings that dot the landscape of Middle America, sprint car racers remain stoic about their chances of winding up end over end before the night is through. It's a what will be attitude, expressed in 3 words: you never know. You can drive a perfect race. You can keep your car on the edge. Before you know it, the guy next to you sends you over the fence like a human domino. Sometimes it happens when you're so close to victory you can taste it. The checkered flag literally up around the bend. Get shunted here, and that's when tempers heat up quicker than a tin roof in a June sun. Slide way loose in the turns, you might seriously consider never taking off your helmet. Keeps the right cross on the nose. But there's a bedrock assumption made by every competitor before the green flag falls. Come what may, the driver is going to make it through any accident unharmed. If, as Jack Hewitt says, just getting by an accident is an act of God, just walking away from one is not. It's all by design, of the car designer and of the car builder. So let's take a close-up look at this 4-wheeled monster. You'll note it only has 1 gear, straight ahead, full throttle forward.
This is a midget race car. It's powered by a 4-cylinder engine. It weighs about 900 pounds. We use open wheels. This is a 4-cylinder engine like half of a V8. It's inline. We use safety nets to keep our heads within the confines of the roll bars here. The bars are padded for our safety. It's only got a single gear. When it's either in gear or out of gear, there's a shifter cable in there that puts it in gear or takes it out of gear. It's got a high back seat for support. Wrap around your chest for support in case of an accident. We've got big wide tires for our smaller cars we have. We've got very specialized custom built shocks by many of the manufacturers. All the fuel sets back here in the tail tank. They're not very big tanks. The longest race we run is 100 laps, which is only 50 miles on a half-mile track. Sometimes they tumble pretty wild, but 99% of the time we all come out of them safe because we've got good Simpson safety equipment and these roll bars that keep us inside and away from danger.
Padded cages, padded seats. In spite of all these precautions, sprints and midgets are fundamentally open cockpit race cars. If you want the safety gear to work, every driver knows when an accident starts, you've got to keep your head clear. You've got to stay focused, no matter how much you tumble, no matter how jarring pain you feel, to give the gear every chance to work. Survival rule number 1.
At the beginning of the accident, it's how you prevent damage to your physical being, how you hold on to the car. You have to try and maintain grip so your arms don't get out. In one of my crashes, my arm got out of the car and it was separated at the elbow. So it's very much a focus of mine to maintain the grip, but you can't stiffen up. You have to be flexible or body parts are broken.
Survival rule number 2. Absorb as little of the impact as possible. Stay limp. Let the G-forces move you around. These are the staying alive details of a least wanted but most unavoidable rite of passage. But learning the ins and outs of this crash course and how to walk away from an accident is critical. Prevent injury at all costs. The alternative? Rehabilitating broken bones, massive burns, and other injuries can sometimes lead to weeks of painful physical therapy. Yet even here, these drivers see the world with a different set of eyes than the rest of us. The true sprint or midget racers actually use pain as a motivator. The sooner you push through it, the sooner you can race again.
It helped me so much to get through my therapy. I had that desire to get back in there and get back to where I was, that I pushed my therapy to the limits every day. And so I think I was blessed with that desire to get back into the car, but still when I got in the car, I had to relearn a lot of things.
To relearn a lot of things. That's because in spite of the terrible physical toll taken on the body by a racing accident, sometimes the worst damage is done to pieces of the mind.
In reality, they are as violent as they appear.
I don't really think you can compare it to anything.
People look at racing and they say, God, you know, how could you possibly do this to yourself?
I guess it'd be more like ice skating. Your feet comes up higher than your head and you land on your head. You know, when everything kind of gets fuzzy and it just hurts like hell. After the crash, I think it's just dreading Monday mornings because you know how lousy you're really going to feel.
The drivers have a saying, if you haven't crashed, you're not pushing the car hard enough to know where the edge is. You're not racing hard enough to win. You can find them just about any summer's weekend, nearly anywhere throughout the country. Racers taking their high-powered machines out in search of that ever-elusive limit, and as often as not, going beyond it. For the driver, this is the moment that replays itself again and again as the search for answers begins. How did it happen? Why did it happen? If it happens again, what can be done to make sure you come through it in one piece again? Every accident tells a story. And as sure as a driver can tell you about his most thrilling victory, he can tell you stories about his most memorable crash.
Actually, the worst accident that I've ever been in was in October of 1993, and it was actually one of the easiest because it knocked me out. It broke my neck, it killed the sixth nerve to my eye and broke my arm. But when I came to or woke up from all up, they had half that stuff fixed. So we had to spend a little time in the hospital. That's the one I remember the most, but that didn't seem like the hardest one because I didn't have to be awake for it, you know. I got me a helicopter ride and didn't remember it.
But there are worse things that can happen after a ricocheting car comes to a halt.
was in a fire and I had the most excruciating pain I've ever had in my life. I wished I had been knocked out so I didn't have to go through it.
But if you think you've seen just about everything in sprint car racing, look again. Women behind the wheel. It's an equal opportunity sport, not only in its rewards, but in its dangers as well. And if women can take the checkered, they can also take their share of bumps and bruises.
A lot of people ask, how it is out on the track, being female or male, but once the green flag does drop, it doesn't matter. We have the helmets on. Everybody is just a driver. It doesn't matter, and everybody's out there to win. So, and everybody's intense. Doesn't matter, female, male. Everybody wants to win.
This 28-year-old phenomenal female was in good enough shape to be named 1999's Rookie of the Year. But she also needed to be in top condition to walk away from a spectacular crash at 16th Street Speedway.
There's always highs and lows in racing. It's like a roller coaster. Probably the biggest lows I had was a bad flip at 16th Street, just down the road here. Totaled the car, just flipped. Probably the one record I hold was the altitude record, and that's not a good one to have. So I demolished the car there and spent the night in the hospital, and so that's part of the bad part. But all in all, it's good.
Now, we said Sandy was a true racer. How long do you think it took her to get back in the car?
Well, after taking that flip, it didn't really, once you're a racer, you can't think twice, and I didn't. I got back, and actually the first race back was at that track again, and I had one flashback at that same corner, but other than that, I was on the gas and I was ready to go, so it didn't really faze me that much.
A crash at a speedway can really mess with your mind. But some drivers do remember every sight and sound, including this spectacular accident after the race was over.
They moved the flag stand from the inside of Bloomington Speedway to the outside of Bloomington Speedway, and I didn't see the checkered flag at the end of a heat race one night and went into turn one and everyone backed off the throttle but me. And I climbed over a right rear tire and went off the turn one and over the fence and into the parking lot and about got into a few cars. And I was coherent through the whole wreck. It wasn't real jolting and it never knocked me unconscious. So for me, it was more like a roller coaster ride. I shut my eyes and I got real quiet and I could hear the wind whistling and all that. And every time the car hit the ground, you just felt it with all your emotions, just your bones cringing and your muscles turning. And that was one of my most thrilling accidents and something the fans will probably always remember.
You can call it catastrophic trauma or a blessing in disguise. But many drivers are knocked unconscious at the start of an accident and have no recollection of it. 2 years before he catapulted over the wall at Bloomington, Robbie Rice sampled this version of spinning out in the sprints.
I took a bad tumble at the Bloomington Speedway, which knocked me out, gave me bloodshot eyes, and gave me a compressed vertebrae in my neck, which was T3. That was probably my toughest crash. I don't remember a whole lot of it. I remember the first impact and the big jolt to my body, and it kind of faded in and out of consciousness.
As a boy, Justin Marvel watched his dad, a journeyman racer, take it on the chin many times from the sport he loved. Seeing that didn't dampen young Justin's desire. In fact, it was an injury to Father Brad that gave Justin his start.
My dad had taken a really bad ride in 1996. He had broken his back, T4 and T5 he had crushed, and it paralyzed him for about 2 months. The following year we had a sprint car sitting in the garage, so I assumed the racing position that my father had done for 40 years.
The story of the Marvels is typical of racing families throughout the U.S. No amount of adversity can keep a racing pureblood off the track.
My most exciting spills would have to be North Vernon, where we were fighting for a transfer position, me and Jonathan Bernard, and I was on the back end of a slide job and had no choice but to say hello to a fence. I was knocked unconscious and kind of forget how that all went about. It totally wiped out my car, and I think the only thing we were able to save was the fuel. That's just part of auto racing, you know, there's ups and downs, and that's one of my most thrilling downs that I've had.
Like father, like son, racing is in the genes. What did we tell you about true racers and the time they need to reflect on an accident?
Actually, 14 hours later, we had built a brand new car, went back out there, concussion and all, and ran second. So, I mean, with the bad, you take the good, and with the good, you take the bad. You just go on.
I had a severe head injury, and a lot of all my talent and all my years of experience were gone.
Who can forecast what effect severe distress will have on the human mind? For Dan Dryden, it was terrifying.
I had a really bad crash at Eldora 2 years ago. And I sustained a very severe head injury. Short-term memory was gone, and they sent me to some neuropsychological testing, and they wouldn't let me race anything, and it was about to destroy my life. But the amazing thing is our bodies are fantastic at rebuilding themselves, and I'm above and beyond where I was before because I've worked so hard at retraining my brain to retain that stuff.
And it was through that hard work that Dan Dryden turned terror into triumph.
I had to learn how to handle that race car as I'd done so many times before. The first time back in the car, it all started again, that thrill. I won the very first race I got back in. I was so excited about it, I ran off the end of the racetrack and spun out in the infield when it was over, but I won it. And so it's something that can be a blessing to have that inside you to help push you through a tragedy or a situation in your life.
The greatest race car in the world is a sprint car.
It takes all kinds to run a sprint or a midget, but most here will tell you this form of racing is a springboard to a much larger goal. The dream of going wheel to wheel in American stock car racing, or writing a new page in the record book of the world's greatest race, the Indianapolis 500. Jack Hewitt and Dan Dryden are among the chosen few who have made it to Indy. Surprisingly, they'll tell you that competing in the majors has given them new respect, not for the men behind the wheels of Indy's high-tech marvels, but for their sprint car brothers back on the short tracks.
The thing that I thought initially when I got an IndyCar was if one of those IndyCar drivers ever got into a midget at Winchester, they'd show us appreciation. First time I got in an IndyCar, after all the years I've been in race cars, I thought, wow, this is so much easier than I ever imagined. Just about anybody today could get in an IndyCar set up properly, like anybody would hope it would be, and go out there and run competitive. That simple. It's so stable, the downforce applies the car to the ground, the steering's so stable, there's no vibration. You almost turn it with body English. You know, you don't really move the wheel, it's that much. But at Winchester, you're constantly chasing it.
No matter what future a racer's luck will bring him, maybe Indy, maybe NASCAR, this type of racing is definitely big time. Many drivers have found a home right here. And whatever form the technology of the sport takes, every race brings with it the same dangers. A driver can lose it all in the blink of an eye.
I'd say just a crash is a crash. I haven't seen anything. There's no such thing as an easy crash.
Hard on equipment, yes, but devastating to the human body. That's why the cockpit of every Sprint and Midget is filled with safety devices. Together they help to build a cocoon of protection around the driver.
This is the most violent form of racing in America today. That's why we have so many safety features. And around the cockpit we have this netting. When a driver gets in a violent flip, this will keep his head from being outside of the cage, which would cause serious injury on both sides. And also, next to the helmet, we have this helmet rest attached to the full back seat. This is in case the driver's neck muscles seem to wear out toward the end of its feature. He can rest his helmet against that. Also lowering the seat, you see protection for the rib cage. Also, the driver just leans against that because there's quite a bit of G-force, centrifugal force in the corners. And the driver also has the shoulder harnesses, a 5-point safety seat. He has the submarine belt and the lap belt as well. And the steering wheel does come off. If there's a problem, the driver needs to be extracted out of the car. We'll simply take it off like that.
But all the safety equipment in the world isn't foolproof. And serious injury on the race course leads to a chorus of what-ifs.
I feel it inside. I feel lucky that it wasn't me. Sorry, and I'm very supportive of everybody that's in racing that has those tragedies, and I definitely feel for them. But the other side of it is that the thing that comes to my mind is that could have been me, and it's not.
On the big tracks, sprints can run up to 120 miles an hour. At the Silver Crown race in St. Louis, cars can reach 190. But the heart and soul of the sport are the short tracks. These cars are going 85 miles an hour. That's a lap every 14 seconds. It also leaves no room for error. So what keeps these drivers going? What helps them pick up the pieces and race again? It's a simple formula. First, you trust your equipment.
Looking at the cars in a whole, I think they're extremely safe.
And to those who suggest that drivers must be crazy to put themselves at risk, Dan Drinan says,
look at how many people driving down the road feeling completely safe every day that have their lives taken. Anything in life can harm you, but we really prepare, and I believe that I'm in a very safe environment when I get in that race car.
The second part of the formula is one every driver knows. The thrill of winning is a feeling like no other.
It's a phenomenal change from one side to the other, but the victory feeling, the accomplishment of goals working together as a team outweighs all the agony of defeat.
Of course, the thrill of winning is the paycheck, and I really don't think you even think about the paycheck. It's just knowing you beat everybody else out there on the evening.
Taking the checkered flag first and beating all the other cars on a Saturday night, there's nothing that beats that.
Winding your way through the pack takes skill and courage. There's an art to sliding sideways through a corner at these speeds.
From the cockpit, once again, a very violent form of racing. By that, I mean the driver gets thrown against the right-hand side of the seat. And when we go into the corner, we're looking for a stack of mud to put this big right rear tire against so we can use maximum horsepower. Car will roll, maybe lift up the left side, and then we get set up to come off of the corner. Sometimes we'll bring the car down low. Going in those corners, 2 or 3 abreast, sliding in next to other competitors, we need these Nerf bars, because if we don't have these Nerf bars, right here in front of the right rear tire will climb over another wheel and tire, and unfortunately there have been some violent flips from that.
Of course, every rule is made to be broken, and mavericks like Jack Hewitt have their own way of attacking a race course.
Everybody wonders why I run the high side. What I tell them is running the bottom is like having a job. You know, you've got to really concentrate and not make any mistakes. Where on the top, you can just gas it and go.
If running with the pack is like a job, then you're watching the firm of Hewitt, Drinan, Marble, Rice, and Eaton in a typical day at the office. On the track, this job doesn't give credit. Make a mistake, and you get paid right away. Lose it in the pack and you risk facing a racer's greatest fear. It's called bada bing time. That's when the driver is in his most helpless position.
When the car hits the ground and I am conscious, my next fear is somebody else striking my crash car. It's happened a couple times, so that's the first thing. You want to look around and make sure everybody's aware of what's going on. Several times I've had a lot of things that could continue to add to the problem area that you're in. If the safety gear has worked as it always does, you release your belts and try and get out as fast as possible.
Like a high-speed morality play, the on-track drama of racing plays out before bleachers packed with fans. All too often, those eyewitnesses include families who have learned to accept a loved one's choice to risk life and limb for glory. For some, it has been a bitter pill. Dan Drinan's dad has never fully recovered from the night the rumor mill told him that racing had taken his son's life.
It took him a long time to get back to comfort around it. Even though I was comfortable, he still wasn't. So it's been very tough on him, and I apologize for that. I've put them through some terrible things, but they've been so supportive because they believe in what I'm about and what I want in my life.
As lead-footed dads pass the love of the sport to their sons, racing spouses can find themselves caught in the middle. Take the Hewitt family, for instance.
Well, my wife, you know, she gets a little nervous, especially this year, because my boy's going to turn 16 in March and he's going to start racing 360s. But she's learned to live with it. We both know what I'm getting into, the risks, and the rewards. So if you can't take one without the other, then you shouldn't be in this sport. And she knew coming in what I did for a living, and she likes it.
But no matter how supportive a family in the stands is, you've got to trust the experience of the guy racing right next to you. Fail in that trust, and you're right back into bada bing time, the most dangerous time of all.
The only thing that ever enters into my mind as far as a concern is something that somebody might do to me on the track.
I've been actually racing midgets for about 10 years now, but you still get a little nervous and excited. It's probably like every summer when you go to the amusement park and ride the roller coaster. You did it last year, but it's still fun to do it again the next year.
If he's still nervous after 10 years of painting the sprint car beast, Brian Gerster has a right to be. This is a roller coaster ride that has some pretty serious bite.
These sprint cars are very lively. To try and control the 800 horsepower under your right foot in only a 1,400-pound chassis is pretty much of a challenge.
It's like controlling a 1,400-pound pinball. What makes these cars behave the way they do in a crash?
In simplest form, when you have a tire that runs as low a pressure as we typically do in the midget, sprint cars, or champ cars, it's able to compress and build energy and accelerate the action of the car.
Well, when you flip one of these cars and they get a little air, you know, with the air pressure down really low, it just kind of catapults them and they kind of pick up speed and height.
It's as traumatic as you could believe inside that race car when it's being thrashed about. You can hit the ground, undo your belts and get out of it and be fine. Or as I've had in the past, you know, be put into a coma by how you struck the ground. So any little change in how you hit, how you flip can create a different result. It's all in how the contact, how the force applied applies to the driver.
Watching out for the guy in front of you and praying that the guy behind you is doing the same. It all gets complicated by the dirt. Unlike any other form of motorsport, these cars run on a surface that changes dramatically with every lap. Each new race is like the first day of school, even for a savvy 27-year veteran.
You gotta still be learning in race cars, because the day that you're not learning something is the day that you're not going to go any faster. You know, things change daily with these things. The track will change every time you go out, especially on the dirt. So I think if you say, I already know it all, then that's as far as you're going to go.
Learning to run on the dirt isn't a matter of keeping the car under control. Just ask any driver. These metal monsters can't be tamed. Forget about finesse. You might as well try to steer a freshly rented Bronco.
You're partially out of control most of the time. You just go down the straightaway and you drive it in as deep as you think you can without missing the corner. You try to get back on the gas to get the wheels spinning forward.
Stay off the brakes. Step on the gas. That kind of instruction would drive your average driver's engines crazy. But there's more. Want to stay off the fence? Then turn right into it.
You never really turn your wheels to the left when you're on dirt. You actually turn to the right more to go left. And when you're going through the corners, you got an 800 horsepower that you're trying to steer with your throttle. You might use the brake every now and then to help set the car, but you're just pretty much steering with the throttle.
Add 24 other cars, and it's like a game of chess with piston. To make it through the pack in one piece, you have to anticipate not just the move in front of you, but the one you're going to put on the guy 3 cars ahead. And all on an unpredictable dirt track. According to driver Ricky Shelton, you've got to be able to do what he calls reading the racetrack.
You got to be able to try and figure out before the guy ahead of you whether the track's slicking off or it's getting tackier or if it's building a cushion, or just try and figure out what the racetrack's going to do, anticipate it before the next guy ahead of you does.
We've talked about anticipating. We've talked about track conditions. We've talked about outthinking the other guy. Now let's complicate things a little more. Drivers wear full helmets. That restricts their peripheral vision. The best drivers rely upon sheer instinct.
If you're in the middle of the pack or in the back of the pack, sometimes things happening all around you and you can only keep so many eyes on so many situations. So a lot of times, things happen right in front of you. You just got to go with your first instinct or reaction. And usually what I think of, if I see something happening shortly in front of me, I kind of figure which way their momentum's going to take them. And usually if you aim for where the accident's starting at, it'll end up somewhere else before you get there.
When it starts happening, you've got a split reaction that you can't control the car no more, and then you're just pretty much along for the ride, and all you can do is just close your eyes, duck your head, and just try to get in a tuck position and just ride her out until she's over with. When it finally comes to a stop, you pretty much you're hoping it's to stop and nobody's going to run into you. And you just kind of check, make sure you can see everything, your head's all clear, and just kind of take it easy and take a breath to find out what's going on around you.
And sometimes a driver doesn't like what he finds out. If you think they have a split reaction when they realize they're going into the fence, you can imagine the mixed emotions they have finding out they've been injured.
When we got out of the race car, I was pretty sure I was hurt and didn't really want to admit to it, so we ended up going to the hospital the next day and ended up having a broken neck, and that was probably the most disappointing part of my career.
Picture yourself behind the wheel. Suddenly you sense you're in trouble, and in the back of your mind, you know. You've seen all the pictures, watched all the tape. Losing it here means end over end at 100 miles an hour.
First time I got a chance to drive a sprint car here back in Midwest, didn't too hot. Went out for hot laps, and I think I lasted about a half a lap of hot laps and drove it into turn one a little too hard and sailed the thing on out of the place. I first knew I was in trouble when I jumped up on two wheels. I knew then it was going to be a pretty exciting ride after that. I knew there was no coming back. I just braced myself the best I could and closed my eyes and tried to wait for it to stop.
It's gone, and there's nothing in the world you can do to stop it. For Ricky Shelp, it happened in his very first sprint race.
There's not a whole lot I can say about the wreck. I remember it was one of those days where I woke up on my couch at 3 or 4 in the morning and was asking people what happened that day. It was just one of those days you wish you could forget, but you don't really have to because you don't remember it.
One of the questions that's been asked the most is how many times I've won features. Well, there's two questions that I can't answer, is how many features I've won and how many times I've crashed, because I can't count that high.
Drivers may not, but the body does. Take enough hits, and it's like boxing. Sooner or later, you have to make the painful decision to hang it up. After all, your life depends upon making the right decision.
It's a fact of life that our brain takes head injuries and it adds them up. It's not just like I had a head injury 10 years ago, now I have one today, I go through the same thing. It's an accumulative function, and it's made me look at what I do and the situations I put myself in from a very guarded angle now. I stopped racing short track dirt midgets because that, as much as I loved it, was where I was sustaining most of those injuries, because the way the cars are built and the tire pressures and the racetracks and all the situations we put ourselves in, it's more possible to have a crash and end up with that injury in that environment. So I stopped doing one of the things I love.
It might seem like an easy thing to walk away from, the risk often outweighing the rewards. But as the driver sees it, the only responsibility he has is to himself. Can he still compete? Can he still win? Can he survive?
It'd be like me telling somebody that likes to play golf to stop playing golf, or somebody that has something they really enjoy in their life. I don't see it as I'm endangering anybody. I see it as something that I'm doing that I truly enjoy and love.
Walking away isn't easy. This is a love affair with danger that spans generations. For some, it's having to pinch themselves to make sure it's all real. This achievement of a lifelong dream passed down from parent to child.
Ever since I was little, I was always going to the racetrack with my dad and following him and rooting him on at the racetrack. And probably when I was about 8 or 9, I was really wanting to start racing. And my mom was really against it and really didn't want me to participate because she knew the dangers of auto racing.
But soon, a parent's fears give way to the bulletproof optimism of youth. And if you're young and hungry, nothing can keep you from your life's call.
I decided to pursue racing 100%. With the purses growing and auto racing growing in such a rapid form, that it makes it possible for a young person like me to pursue my dreams, which would be to drive at the Indianapolis 500 in the IRL or to go to Daytona in the NASCAR series. So right now that's what I'm looking forward to, just to pursue with my racing career and go from there.
I would like to make a career out of auto sports, and I have a lot of goals. So kind of year by year, that's a process getting up to whether it's IRL, kart, or NASCAR. You know, I just want to be able to drive with professionals. I know it's a dream and it's a long shot. There's several people out there trying to make it, you know, in the whole country. But I'm going to shoot for my dream and do everything I can to achieve that.
And that means accepting the risk. For many drivers, the goal is to beat the sport itself, to leave on your own terms rather than to have the violence of racing force you out. Dan Drynan may have walked away from the midgets. He still has something to prove in the sprints.
I've seen some phenomenal athletes have to make that decision. I know I'm nowhere near that, and I think someday I will be, and how I'll deal with it at that time, I don't know. I'd like to go out on top, and I've seen some people try and push beyond that and finally bow out. I'm not on top yet. I'd like to kind of go out there. I have a never-ending desire to be better. There's always a better mousetrap out there, and I want to be part of it.
And then there are the old pros like Jack Hewitt. Just like Robbie Rice, he grew up watching his dad race.
When I wanted to be a race car driver, I was a kid because my dad raced for 30 years, but ever since I grew up, my dad raced, so I wanted to be a race car driver.
And although he's raced in the big leagues, he always returns to this form of racing. He's still the king. Jack's seen a lot of drivers come and go, but for his money, he'll take the sprints every time.
The sprint cars and the midgets have to be the ultimate race car. You know, you see people like Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, they end up going down the road, and the only reason because I think after a midget or a sprint car, the rest of the race cars are easier. They're the most violent, and they're the most fun, they're the scariest. But like I said, after that, the rest of them get easy.
And for you thrill seekers, this is about as much as you want to get a hold of. This much horsepower under your right foot, you'll have a great time.
I have fun racing because I've did it for 27 years, and the day I quit having fun will be the day I quit. You know, I see people that quit at the top. You know, people said, well, you got to quit while you're still winning. They've quit, they retired the way they're supposed to do, and they're unhappy. Well, they're going to say, man, I remember when he used to win races, but look at him, he's still smiling.
Still smiling and laughing at the danger.